She shouted from across the fence. "He's trespassing. Get the cops here right now." Her voice cut through the afternoon air like a siren. I stepped out of my garage, wiping my hands from working on the old truck. 2 police cruisers rolled in before I could even speak. My son, Ethan, stood frozen on the porch, his eyes wide and scared. He was just 17, but Karen made him look like a criminal. One of the officers said, "Sir, we got a call about a suspicious male entering this property." I blinked in disbelief. "Suspicious male? That's my son," I said calmly, pointing at Ethan. Karen stood on the sidewalk, phone still in her hand, smirking like she'd won something. "He's not your son," she said, crossing her arms. "I've seen enough kids sneaking into empty homes. This house isn't even yours. You're renting illegally." The cop looked at me, waiting. I could have yelled, but I didn't. I just said, "Officer, I built this home myself 8 years ago. I own every brick here." Karen scoffed. "Oh, please, you can't even afford this neighborhood. I checked the HOA database. You're not listed." That's when the SUV pulled up. Black tinted windows. Karen's smile started to fade the moment. 2 tall men stepped out wearing simple shirts, but walking with the discipline you can't fake. "Sir," one of them said to me, nodding respectfully, "we're ready for the briefing whenever you are." Karen's face went pale. Who are they?" she stuttered. I turned to her, keeping my voice steady. "They're old friends, Karen. Navy SEALs, actually. We served together." Her mouth fell open, but she tried to recover. "You're making that up," she snapped. But before she could finish, one of the SEALs looked straight at her and said quietly, "Ma'am, you might want to step back. We're here on a private visit, not a neighborhood drama." The cops exchanged glances, suddenly unsure of what they'd walked into. Karen's tone shifted fast. She tried to sound polite. "I was just concerned for the safety of the community," she muttered. But Ethan finally spoke, his voice shaking. "You called the cops on me for standing on my own porch?" Karen didn't answer. She just stared at the SEALs like she'd seen a ghost, and right there I said something that made her blink twice. "You really should have checked who you're dealing with before calling the cops." Karen, she didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. That evening, I was fixing dinner when I noticed flashing lights again outside. Karen hadn't learned her lesson. This time there were 3 HOA members standing beside her car, holding papers like they were about to serve a warrant. I stepped out slowly, keeping my calm. "What now, Karen?" I asked, trying not to raise my voice. She lifted a sheet of paper high like a trophy. "This," she said proudly, "is an official HOA notice. You and your son are banned from using your driveway until the board reviews your violation." "Violation?" I frowned. "For what?" She smiled that same fake sweet smile. "Unauthorized guests. Military personnel are not allowed to conduct operations in this neighborhood." One of the SEALs, Jake, who was still staying with us for the week, chuckled. "Operations?" he repeated. "We were helping fix a water pump, ma'am." Karen shot him a glare. "I don't care what you call it. I'm the HOA vice president and you broke the rules." Her 2 board members nodded, pretending to look official. I could tell they didn't even know what they were doing. One of them whispered, "Karen, are we even allowed to—" But she shushed him hard. Then, without warning, a tow truck rolled up. My old Ford truck, my late father's truck, was parked on the side. The driver stepped out and said, "I was told to impound this vehicle. Show request." My stomach dropped. "You can't touch that truck," I said firmly. "It's on my property." Karen smirked, tapping her phone. "Actually, the HOA has jurisdiction over street parking violations." The SEALs moved closer, their presence enough to make the tow driver hesitate. "Ma'am," one said calmly, "if that truck moves an inch without a legal order, that's theft." Karen raised her voice. "Don't threaten me. I'll call the police again." I stepped forward, my patience gone. "Do it," I said. "But this time make sure they bring the sheriff himself." Her confidence cracked for the first time. She didn't know I wasn't bluffing. The sheriff and I had served together years ago. She tried to look composed, but her fingers shook as she dialed. "You're done," she hissed. "This time I'll make sure you're evicted." Jake leaned in close to me and whispered, "Sir, she's walking herself into something she can't handle." I nodded. "I know." Let her finish digging. Within minutes, 2 real police cars arrived. Karen ran up to them, waving her arms. "Arrest him! He's threatening me and harboring unauthorized military." The officer she spoke to looked past her, then saw me. His eyes lit up in recognition. "Lieutenant?" he said, walking over with a grin. Karen froze. "Lieutenant?" she repeated weakly. I smiled faintly. "Evening, Deputy." "Long time." He nodded. "We served together in San Diego, right?" "What's going on here?" I gestured toward Karen. "She's filing false reports, trespassing on private property, and ordering illegal towing." Karen's face went red. "That's not true. I'm the HOA." The deputy cut her off. "Ma'am, the HOA doesn't outrank federal service members or override property rights. Step aside." The crowd that had gathered began whispering. Karen looked around, her voice breaking. "This isn't over," she muttered. I leaned closer and said quietly, "You're right. It's just starting." Because the next morning, I found something in my mailbox that changed everything. The next morning, when I stepped outside, the air felt heavy, too quiet for our neighborhood. A single white envelope sat in my mailbox, no stamp, no name. Just one word written on it, "Warning." I tore it open right there on the porch. Inside was a folded HOA letter, but it wasn't like the usual fake notices Karen made up. This one had official signatures, the president's, the treasurer's, and even a small HOA watermark at the bottom. But right under the letterhead, someone had scribbled in pen, "She's not who she says she is." I frowned, reading the printed part. It claimed I owed over $18,000 in unpaid HOA fines. Impossible, I'd never missed a payment. And at the bottom, there was an attached copy of a property transfer form, with Karen's name listed as the new owner of my home. I read that line twice, my heart pounding. She was trying to steal my property. Jake came out when he saw my face. "Sir, what's wrong?" I handed him the paper silently. He scanned it and muttered, "This is forged." But whoever did it knew what they were doing. Before I could respond, Karen appeared again, like she had been waiting for me to read it. "Oh," she said with a smirk, "you got my notice? You forged my property title?" I asked quietly. Her smile widened. "It's not forgery if the HOA approves it. You violated multiple codes. The board decided to transfer ownership until your case is cleared." "That's not legal," I said, my voice flat. "Maybe not," she replied, stepping closer. "But it'll take months for you to prove it, and by then you'll be gone." Jake moved between us, his tone sharp. "Ma'am, you're tampering with federal property records. That's a felony." Karen didn't flinch. "You think anyone's going to believe a bunch of washed-up soldiers over me? I run this neighborhood." That's when Ethan came out, holding his phone. "Dad," he said, "you might want to see this." He handed it to me. He'd found a video on the HOA's private residence forum. It was security footage from Karen's porch camera. In it, she was shown late at night handing a stack of documents to a man in a black jacket, whispering, "Make sure this looks official." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Who's that guy?" Karen's smugness faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. That's just the HOA accountant." I smiled coldly. Funny, because that accountant, I zoomed into the video, is a known real estate scammer. He was investigated by the sheriff's department 2 years ago. Karen's face turned pale. "You didn't know I keep track of fraud cases, did you?" I said softly. She took a step back. You can't prove anything." "Oh, I can," I replied, sliding the letter into my jacket pocket. "And I will." But then something happened that made the whole situation darker. Jake checked his phone and frowned. "Sir," he said quietly, "someone just reported Ethan to Child Services for living with dangerous individuals." Karen looked away, pretending not to hear. My blood boiled. "You went after my son now?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away slowly, saying, "You should have moved when I told you to." Jake put a hand on my shoulder. "Sir, she's trying to break you down." I nodded. "Then it's time we break her story apart first." Because I had already called someone she'd never expect. Someone who outranked everyone in that neighborhood, including the police. That night the doorbell rang just after 9. The sound echoed through the house like a warning. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. Sheriff Dalton, broad shoulders, calm eyes, same man I'd served with years ago overseas. He didn't waste a second on small talk. Heard you've got yourself a situation, he said quietly, stepping inside. Jake and the other SEALs straightened up as soon as they saw him. Good to see you again, sir, one of them said. Dalton nodded. Wish it were under better circumstances. He placed a folder on the table, heavy and worn. I ran the name Karen Mullins through the system, he said, looking me straight in the eye. You're not gonna believe this. I leaned forward. Try me. He flipped open the file. Her real name is Karen Blake. She was charged 3 years ago in Arizona for HOA fund embezzlement. $500,000 gone. Changed her name, moved here, started a new HOA board under fake credentials. Ethan gasped. She's a criminal? Dalton nodded. Yeah, and she's been doing this for a while. Every few years, she moves, runs a new HOA, forges property transfers, and disappears before she gets caught. I clenched my fists. So this whole time she's been trying to take our home to cover her tracks. Dalton gave a slow nod. Exactly. And it gets worse. That accountant from your footage, he's her ex-husband. They work as a team, Jake spoke up. Then why isn't she already behind bars? Dalton sighed. Because she's smart. She never signs anything in her legal name. Everything runs through HOA channels. Keeps it looking legitimate. But you just gave us something solid. That video changes everything. Just then we heard shouting outside. Karen was standing in the street waving papers, her voice sharp and desperate. He's harboring illegal military weapons. I saw them. They're building something in that garage. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Cameras started recording. Dalton opened the door and stepped out slowly, badge gleaming under the porch light. Ma'am, he said firmly, this is Sheriff Dalton. You're under investigation for forgery, identity fraud, and harassment. Karen froze, realizing the voice was one of authority she couldn't control. What, you can't do this, she shouted. I'm the HOA president. Dalton showed her the open file. Not anymore. This says you're a wanted fugitive under a different name. She tried to run, but Jake was faster. He didn't touch her, just blocked her path. Don't, he said quietly. You've caused enough damage. Karen looked around, shaking, her arrogance collapsing into panic. You don't understand, she cried. He was supposed to sell me the house. He promised. Dalton frowned. Who promised? She hesitated, eyes darting toward a black SUV parked near the corner. A man inside started the engine and sped off before anyone could get the plate. Dalton's expression darkened. That's her partner. The ex-husband. Karen's face crumpled. He said we'd split the money, she whispered. And that's when the flash of red and blue lights reflected off her face. Backup arrived. The same cops she'd called against me earlier now stepped forward to cuff her. As they read her rights, she screamed, This isn't over. You think you've won, but you don't know who owns this land. I looked her straight in the eye and said, You're right. You don't know either. Because what I was about to reveal next would silence everyone, including the sheriff. The flashing lights faded as Karen was driven away, still shouting from the back of the police car. But I didn't move. I just stood there, looking across the quiet street where this whole mess had started. The same place my son had once been accused of trespassing on our own land. Sheriff Dalton turned to me, his expression mixed with relief and confusion. You said she didn't know who really owns this property. What did you mean by that? I took a slow breath and walked toward the garage. The SEALs followed silently. I opened the drawer of my old workbench and pulled out a steel box, heavy with dust and age. Inside were the original land papers, signed, sealed, and recorded under federal housing development rights. I handed them to Dalton. After my last tour, I said, The government awarded me this land through the Veterans Housing Grant Program. It's under federal protection, meaning no HOA can claim jurisdiction over it. Dalton scanned the documents, his eyes widening. You're telling me this property is protected under federal veterans law? I nodded. Exactly. That's why I never fought Karen's notices too hard. I wanted her to dig deep enough to expose herself completely. Once she crossed into forgery, she crossed a federal line. Jake gave a quiet grin. Smart move, sir. You baited her perfectly. Dalton chuckled softly. You basically ran an undercover sting. In your own neighborhood. Before I could reply, Ethan stepped forward, his voice trembling. So we're safe now? She can't take the house? I smiled and put a hand on his shoulder. No one's taking anything from us ever again. Just then, one of the officers returned. "Sheriff, you'll want to see this," he said, handing him a folder. Inside were several fake property deeds Karen had filed, all of them targeting veterans in the area. She'd been running a quiet scam to steal homes from people who'd served. Dalton exhaled slowly. "She's done. Federal agents will take it from here." Neighbors started stepping out of their homes, whispering, apologizing, even thanking me. The same ones who once believed Karen's lies now looked ashamed. One woman said softly, "We didn't know she was that kind of person. We're sorry for not standing up." I smiled faintly. "You don't need to apologize. Just remember next time, people who shout the loudest about rules are usually the ones breaking them." Ethan hugged me tight, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift off my chest. Dalton looked back toward the road where the patrol car disappeared. "You handled this with more patience than most would. You could have fought back hard." I smiled. "I fought enough battles overseas. This one, I wanted to win the right way." He nodded slowly, eyes soft with respect. "You just reminded this town what justice looks like." As the night grew quiet again, I looked at the flag waving gently. Over the porch, the same flag my team had carried home years ago. I whispered under my breath, more to myself than anyone else. I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't stand on my own land. And this time the silence that followed didn't feel tense. It felt peaceful, like justice finally belonged where it should.